Okay, I think we are good to get started. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we're going to take Q&A at the end of the panel session. So if anybody has any questions for the panelists, you're welcome to put them into the Q&A chat box, and we'll address those at the end. And I am going to start off with just a quick presentation about impact careers before we dive into the panel. What do I do? Let me put this on full screen. And so, yeah, Rachel, I'll hand it off to you to start it off. Looking forward to the presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Erin. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Really excited for our first event here with the Impact Careers program. My name is Rachel. I'm a program manager with Decentralized Energy Canada. I'm presenting today with Erin. And our team at DEC is very happy to introduce our Impact Careers program, which invites everyone to take action and choose a career in sustainability. Next slide. So before we jump into Impact and today's panel discussion, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about DEC. So DEC is a national nonprofit industry association, which serves and is driven by its members. We are based out of Calgary, but our focus is on the development of decentralized energy across all of Canada. And our biggest asset is our vast member network and online reach, and we are committed to using them to strive towards a decentralized energy future. So if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about us, you can head to our website, www.deassociation.ca. Next slide. So our mission, DEC's mission is to disrupt the Canadian energy status quo and create opportunities for decentralized energy by convening, educating, and engaging stakeholders. Next slide. And our impact program aims to do just that by educating and raising awareness about critical topics that have a large impact in the industry. For example, the value of mentorship, the business case for gender equity, and sustainable innovations in the industry. And throughout the program, we are inviting experts at the leading edge of their fields to identify the jobs of the future. We're promoting job opportunities to connect job seekers to sustainable employers. And we are speaking to how the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are being integrated into the decentralized energy job market. So essentially, our program aims to bridge the gap between a sustainable workforce and a just energy transition. All right, so now a few logistical details before we kick it off here. So the program is being held virtually, so it's easily accessible to all Canadians. It will feature a series of webinars, panels, and matchmaking sessions with some of the most progressive corporate leaders in Canada. When the program is being run between September and November 2021. And why? Well, a skill gap needs to be filled to achieve a just energy transition. And this program shows how the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are being integrated into Canada's job market and how they contribute to filling that gap. So now I'll hand off the presentation to Erin to speak about our upcoming programming.
Thanks, Rachel. So my name's Erin. I'm the marketing manager for Decentralized Energy Canada. And so in addition to today's panel, we have some other webinars coming up. The next one is focused on SDG8, which is gender equity. That one's happening next Tuesday, September 21st at the same time from 12 to 1:30. And that one's really going to focus on the role that gender equity plays in industry transition, and for companies, what that looks like in terms of innovation and business adaptation. There are sponsorship opportunities to get involved with Impact. If your company is interested, we have 3 different levels, all with different incentives. So if you're interested in a speaking opportunity at a webinar or a panel like this, you can get in touch with me after the webinar. And there's also lots of marketing and branding support that comes with these if you have sustainable initiatives that you'd like to reach our network. And so the opportunities to still be involved in speaking slots are on these specific SDGs, 7, 9, 11, 12, and 13. And I just wanted to send a huge thank you to our program partners and sponsors. So this program wouldn't be possible without you guys. So we have Schneider Electric, EHRC, and Women in Power. And lastly, I also wanted to mention EHRC's Mentor Junction. So the theme of this panel is on mentorship, and EHRC has a free online platform called Mentor Junction that connects mentors and mentees together, specific to the electricity sector. So if you are interested in that, the link is below and I can send that out as well after the panel. And that's our presentation. If you have any questions about Impact Careers, you can get in touch with us. Other than that, I will pass it off to Mark to start the panel.
Thank you, Erin. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. And to Rachel as well. And a big thank you actually to Decentralized Energy Canada, of course, for bringing us all together today. Welcome everyone to the Value of Mentorship panel. I am really pleased to be moderating such an important topic. I think we've all read a lot about the future of work, skills requirements, industry change, a little bit about, of course, traditional career ladders that are becoming increasingly less common. And it's sometimes feels like I think that there's a lot of formalized pathways to personal and professional development, or perhaps becoming more informal, especially for newcomers to the electricity and sustainability, clean tech, energy efficiency space. I know that's a mouthful, and we'll probably get into that a little more as we talk today. On that note, talk about an industry that is headed into growth mode. The last few economic projections that I've reviewed have suggested a labor force growth of 2 to 3 times current size over the next 2 decades. So that is a long time, of course, but we have a lot of work to do if we're actually going to achieve our carbon emissions targets over the next 2 decades. So I think today's discussion on the value of mentorship in sustainability jobs is both timely and, of course, incredibly important. My name is Mark Czapewski. I'm VP of Program Development at Electricity Human Resources Canada, or EHRC. At EHRC, we like to think of ourselves as action-oriented researchers. What I mean by that is we do the comprehensive work to understand what the labor market is telling us. Where are the jobs? What are the jobs? What skills are required to do the jobs? And from this, we provide recommendations for actions to our diverse group of stakeholders: employers, unions, post-secondary institutions, and of course, policymakers. But we don't stop there, and this is where the action comes in. We take our recommendations and we work with partners to make change. So change looks like more youth, better diversity across occupations and levels, new occupations, and better skills and more efficient skills transfer. Those are the types of programs and projects we deliver. For myself, on the subject of the less traditional career path, I have been a teacher, international aid worker, web development account and project manager, and now executive manager for a national nonprofit. Each experience has taught me something, and I've been fortunate to have people guide me along the way. Not always formal mentors, but advisors, sounding boards, family, friends, colleagues. But that's enough about me. I'm actually pleased to be joined here today by Natalie, Janine, Liz, and Shatiz, all leaders in their respective fields. And so I'd like to open the floor so that each panelist can introduce themselves and tell us a little bit more about your job. What's fun? What's challenging? What's rewarding? So just because I'm looking at the Zoom Hollywood squares here, I'm actually going to start to my left. And I know that's probably different for everyone, but Liz, if you'd like to take it away to start us off.
You bet. Thanks, Mark. Great intro. My name's Liz Lappin. Very pleased to share the next hour or so with you. I'm the VP Corporate Affairs and Exploration for E3 Metals Corp. My background is geology. I started off my career in the oil industry, and about 5 or 6 years ago pivoted into new energy sources like geothermal and lithium. At E3 Metals Corp, we're looking to develop a project in Alberta, right between Calgary and Edmonton, that's actually located in some of Alberta's historic oil fields, or the same reservoirs that the oil fields have been developed in. And we're looking to make about 1 or 2% of global demand for lithium in the mid-2020s for the growing electric vehicle industry. What's fun about my job, of course, is the rocks, because I'm a geologist forever. But there's also elements of sustainability, which I'm excited to get into with you today. New technology development, I'd put that in the category of being both fun as well as challenging. Sometimes you can be on the cutting edge, which can also be the bleeding edge of something. And technology development is never a straight path. So, certainly that's,
a huge element of sustainability moving forward is all the new technologies that will be developed. So if it's okay with you, Mark, I'll maybe pass it on to the next person.
By all means, go for it.
Okay, I'll pass it over to Janine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Janine Vanny. I'm VP Geosciences at Ever Technologies, Inc. EverTech is a closed-loop geothermal company. So we're a young startup company. We're about 4 years old. And our value proposition is providing carbon-free heat and power through just cycling of water through a loop deep underground. So it's unique and it is cutting edge. I would call cutting edge in the clean tech industry. However, it's built kind of on the back of oil and gas technology, which is what I think is really unique about it. My background, I'm a geoscientist, spent the majority of my career working in oil sands. So about 15 years working oil sands in unconventional plays in Western Canada. And then I think pivoted into geothermal about the same time as Liz, about 5 years ago. I think she was in about a year before me. What's fun about my job is we work globally. And so I get to meet technical professionals around the globe on a daily basis from all parts of the world. So learning from them, meeting new cultures, sharing ideas, sharing the same dream that was created in Canada. And what's rewarding for me now, because I'm a founder of the company and we now have more of a team established, is watching that team grow, building that team, watching that team grow, and empowering those people to move into the technical roles that the founders kind of started with. So yeah, I think I'll, from there, I'll pass it to Shatiz.
Thank you, Shani. This is Kshitij Agarwal. I'm VP of Sales for Schneider Electric Canada Operations, part of the executive leadership team. At Schneider Electric, we are the global leaders in energy management and automation. And our mission is to help you become more sustainable and efficient. I'm an electrical engineer, been with Schneider for close to 2 decades, have worked in 4 different continents, traveled to 60 plus countries. And the most fun part about my job is meeting people. And when I say that, engineering being a very technical domain, I decided very early on that I will use that technical knowledge that I have gained to help the customers worldwide and see them transition through the different technology stacks, which Liz just mentioned, the cutting edge technology, which has been launched throughout, how that technology can help them be more efficient and sustainable at the core of our DNA. So yeah, I love interacting with our customers and helping them in their sustainable journey. On that note, I'll pass it on to Natalie.
So much. Happy to be here. Happy my Zoom finally works. Always the fun challenges. So I'm Director of Stakeholder Engagement here at Efficiency Canada. I'm coming from Ottawa, Ontario, which is also the Algonquin unceded territories. Efficiency Canada is the national voice for an energy efficient economy. We're based at Carleton University. Essentially, I'm kind of like a lobbyist, but I know that has like a dirty word attached to it, so I don't like to use that too often. I like to tell people I just have an opinion, and I like to push the government to create stronger policies and educate people on the benefits of what energy efficiency can bring. So the health benefits and the saving money benefits and the there's so many. I'll kind of stop there because I'll be here for probably about 10 minutes just talking about all the benefits. But what's fun about my job, that I get to have an opinion, and I get to just chat with people all day. Before it was in person, but that's okay. So my coffee consumption has gone down definitely in the last probably 2 years. Not necessarily a bad thing, but that's what really I love about my job. It's just the stakeholder engagement piece to it, and sometimes I can't believe I get paid to do it. So I'm going to toss it back to you, Mark.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie, and thank you everyone for that great introduction. I guess we'll jump right in. So what was, I'm not sure who wants to lead off with this, but what was your first industry job? What role did mentorship play in shaping your career? I think, why don't I, you know what, since I get to pick, I'm going to actually throw this one over to Shitiz.
Thanks, Mark. Look, I have been only with Schneider, right? As I said, I have worked in 4 different continents over the last 2 decades. But the journey started me being hired fresh out of college as a management trainee. And at that time, I had no clue if I would stay that long in Schneider. And where I am today is mostly due to all the coaching I have got, all the mentorship I have got, and all the guidance I've got throughout the past 2 decades. It's simple maths, right? To mentor for 1 hour is equivalent to 4 to 10 hours of research that you have to do if you have to do it by yourself. Mentorship not only helps you learn from your mentors' experiences, but it helps you to crystallize your own experience. It has helped me a lot to learn about the real workplace related issues and how to navigate if I were to be in that situation, learning from my mentor's experience. So it's been a core pillar, and I'm very privileged to have mentors throughout my different phases of my life. And I wish and I hope I continue having those throughout my career. Back to you, Mark.
Oh, it's interesting. She says, I hadn't actually heard that that metric before, the 1 hour of mentorship to 4 hours of research and personal development. So that's a really interesting point, I think. Liz, over to you.
All right. Yeah, I started off my career in the oil industry as a junior geologist. And I definitely think coming out of school and into the work environment, I had to learn a lot of things. I had one particular mentor who was a bit, super smart, a bit eccentric. And I was really banging my head against a wall on a particular problem. And he came into my office and he said, Liz, I need you to be an ideas factory. and honestly, it sounds like a simple thing, but it changed my whole perspective on the approach to the work because it brought creativity into it. I was thinking about there had to be a specific way of doing it. And what I really needed to do was step back and just blue sky it and think about all the different ways that we could interpret something. And I think that just that one piece of advice has I still refer back to it almost 20 years later. And, it factors into the decisions that I made and the ability that I had to pivot and really, I think, grow in my career and in my experience. So lots of different mentors along the way, peer mentors, technical mentors, management mentors, and certainly wouldn't be here without them.
That's interesting, and the fact that the transition from oil and gas to another industry is always fascinating too. And I think we're going to dig into that a little more as we discuss a little more on the panel. So, but for now, Janine, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I came out of school out of the East Coast and moved west into Encana. So my first job was also, working the basal quartz channels near Medicine Hat, right? So. And I did find the mentors that influenced my career the most were challenging me to look at the bigger picture. So yes, focus on the rocks, but what's the big picture and how does this fit into the economics? What's the concern of your friendly neighborhood engineer? And that is a thing that I've carried with me throughout my career. And to this day, I'm still more of a big picture person than I am a details person, which also speaks to coming into a new company and trying to stand it up, working on a new technology that perhaps, there isn't a straight path, like Liz says, to get there. So that's, I think, and as my career progressed, of course, I do have different mentors, some more on the management side of things. And there, I think the challenge is that they challenge me to face kind of my fears and my imposter syndrome and that sort of thing. And that's been really valuable for me, especially as I moved into the leadership role that I'm in now.
Awesome. Thanks, Janine. Natalie, I think you bring a unique perspective to this. So I think it's a great opportunity to sort of talk about that a bit too.
Well, thank you, Mark. I like to think that as well. It's a unique perspective in the fact that I'm on a panel talking about mentorship, but I actually haven't really had like I haven't had an official mentor or even an unofficial mentor before. I think my background, which I don't think is it's not unique. So if anyone's watching this and thinking, I've never had a mentor, like, you're not alone. It's okay. I think you kind of learn something and take something from all different people you talk to. And I think for me, I like to pass along a lot of the things. I think I took like the hardest, longest road to get to where I am today. And I've kind of had to be my own mentor in a way, which is really helped me to grow once I kind of realized that and realized it was up to me to, I was responsible for my own career. So my background, I actually have a business degree, my undergrad, and my background's in marketing and communications, in which case I could work in so many different industries. So I worked in pharmaceuticals, education, I've worked in professional services. I've worked for cell phone companies. So I worked for a casino at one point. So I've kind of done it all. And I kind of landed in energy efficiency, which a lot of people I find in energy efficiency, you just kind of fall into it. I did have the direction of being told that I would gravitate towards purpose-driven work, so very purposeful work, and I've kind of landed on that role right now, and that's probably why I love what I do. So that was something a mentor told me, noticed about my personality, which I really moved forward with. And I think the biggest piece of advice that I give as a mentor to a lot of people, especially women, because we find that if we don't meet all the qualifications, we won't apply for jobs. I say apply anyway, but also volunteer, because that gives you the experience that you might not necessarily feel that you have in your professional life, but if you have done it volunteering, that you feel confident to put it down and put your name in the hat for that job. So that's always my piece of advice, is to volunteer.
That's great, Natalie. And you brought up a really interesting, there's been a lot of research done actually on men versus women applying to open job positions, where men will see, and I can say this quite comfortably because there's comprehensive research on it, but men will see a job description and they'll be able to accomplish 75% of the tasks in the job description, and they'll apply. And they'll be like, oh, I'll figure out the other 25% on the job, assuming I ever get an interview. Women will see that as, I can't do 25% of this, so I'm not going to apply at all. And so they self-screen out. And that is a problem. And it's something I think that's so important for especially women to be aware of when they're reviewing, new job opportunities, that just because on paper it doesn't look like you might be able to accomplish the job on paper, that doesn't mean that the employer is going to get the perfect fit candidate. And that is something I think that a lot of recruiters are aware of, but I think generally it's not well known. So that's a really, really great point. So thank you for that, Natalie.
Hey, Mark, could I just jump in there?
Yes, absolutely, Janine.
Yeah, so along that lines, there's a book called The Confidence Code. Have you read it?
I have not read it, but I'm familiar with it. Yes.
And so it's a similar line of research where women will underestimate themselves, or the fact that they're right about 30% of the time. And again, I'm comfortable saying this because it's researched, men overestimate 30%. It's in this book.
Yes.
So, it's good to share that, because sometimes maybe certain women in particular may need more encouragement in certain areas. Not to say men don't either, but that book really helped me a lot understand sort of the candidates, and when I'm interviewing, how I interview and how I'm, helping women along in that interview, just kind of to go after it, right? Because it's kind of a known fact. I don't understand it myself, but it's an interesting topic that I'm glad we're talking about and sharing that today.
Yeah, no, it's an important piece. And I think one of the other things that's sort of come out from the discussion so far is that mentorship doesn't always have to be that formal relationship. It doesn't have to be, excuse me, would you be my mentor, please? It's often, just somebody who gives you, it could even just be an unsolicited piece of advice, and it's up to you to take with it and do with it as you please. And so that's, something I think that's really important to consider, is that you don't always necessarily have to pursue that formal mentorship relationship. Like, it's okay to just seek guidance, seek advice from people you trust and respect. So awesome. All right. Let's sort of, just to help set the stage a bit, like I know we've talked a little bit about introductions, but maybe let's talk about like what was your first industry job? Like where did you begin? I know we sort of just touched on that a very, very little bit, but I'd like to dig into that a little bit more and how you sort of ended up where you are now. Like what was it that what was the guiding factor? I know, Natalie, you know what, Natalie, I'm going to start off with you because you actually sort of talked about this a little bit, but maybe where did you start? Why did you end up exactly where you are now? Like what was the driving thing behind it?
I started in pharmaceutical advertising. I wanted to get a job in advertising and just kind of landed in pharmaceuticals. And I found it interesting. I didn't love it. I didn't love what I was doing, just essentially creating sales sheets for doctors to explain to them how drugs work, which was also scary because I didn't have a science degree. But that's another tangent. But I think I landed where I was because I tried everything else. It feels that way sometimes. I told you my background that I tried a number of different, but it's because of marketing and communications. I still stayed in that field. And when I landed in energy efficiency, it was with Efficiency Nova Scotia at the time. And I just happened to know someone that there was a brand new organization and they said they were looking for a marketing person. And I was like, what's energy efficiency? And they told me about it. And I was like, that kind of sounds interesting and challenging. And I love that it wasn't just selling a product, it was changing behavior, which is pretty cool and challenging from a marketing point of view. So I thought, I'll give it a go. And I've been here over 10 years in the sector, and I don't expect to leave it because I just love the people as well. The people that work in energy efficiency are just, salts of the earth, as you say in the Maritimes. I think I'll stop there because I'm a Maritimer, so I will.
I have a follow on. I have a follow on. I have a follow on for that. So you've talked about energy efficiency and loving it. How do you see that changing, or how has it changed in the last 5 years, and how do you see it changing in the next say 5 or 10?
Oh God, it's changed a lot. I think just the fact that people know what energy efficiency is, not everyone, but it's an everyday conversation. It's a kind of similar had to like fuel efficiency. People know when they go to buy a car, they're like, well, what's the fuel efficiency on this car? It's the same with energy efficiency when you have a home, changing people's behaviors or knowledge of that your energy consumption in your home is something you can actually have control over. If you put like insulation or you can programmable thermostat, make your home more comfortable, for example. And then there's the whole commercial aspect of it as well. And then also energy efficiency is technology based, really, with all the different things that they have, like the Google Nest thermostat, for example. That's new, that's going to change. A lot of it's on your phone now. So when I started 10 years ago, programmable thermostats were still kind of new. Like people were just putting those in their houses. And now you have it on your phone. You have the Nest thermostat that you don't have to do anything because it knows when you're home and when you're not home and what your preferences are. So where is it going to be from 10 years from now? Well, it's technology based. So Lord knows.
Awesome. Shatiz, I think you have some thoughts on this one as well. Sort of how's the industry changed? Where's it going in the next 5 to 10?
Mark, our industry has changed significantly, as Natalie mentioned, right? Just a simple example as a thermostat, we were just learning how to wire it. But it all starts with the acknowledgement that the climate impact is real. And just the mere fact that we all have acknowledged it, it triggers a lot of the other actions that we will see happening in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So when we look at the big corporates, they are changing their mindset from purely for profit organization to become an environmental profit organization. They are now not just, they are wanting to walk the talk, not just for the stakeholders, but for a bigger cause. They are setting their targets on sustainability, which is linked with the ESG goals, and making it public so that the public can see how the different companies are organizing themselves. They are not just working on ensuring that they are more sustainable. They are doing the forward and the backward integration to ensure that the entire supply chain is sustainable. And a lot of it has to be driven by technology. As Natalie was mentioning, the data-driven decisions will become more and more prominent. The voluntary disclosures will become more and more prominent in terms of how the companies are performing. And not to say the least, we all know that the global risks and disruption will continue in one form or another, right? So pandemic is just one lesson that we have all learned, that how we need to mitigate all the things that is happening around us, not just from a health perspective, but from a supply chain perspective. How do we make ourselves more resilient in different regions? So there's a lot that is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, and I guess we all need to buckle up and be ready for that wave in front of us.
That's awesome. Thanks, Kshitij. And I think you've raised the pandemic, and I think one of the things, again, that's often quoted or often stated is that humans, we are capable of big things when we all get behind it and we make change, right? And so the pandemic is of course, we're still in the middle of the fourth wave now in a lot of parts of the country, but we've demonstrated that we can act, that we can make change, that we can do big things. Who thought that a vaccine could be produced in under, what was it, 8 months or something like that? Normally it's 10 years to full marketability. So that's a pretty significant impact in a very short period of time. So when we choose to make a change, we can do it. So yeah, thanks for that, Kshitij. Janine, I think you had some thoughts on this one too, sort of industry, where it's been over the last 5 and where it's going on the next 5 to 10.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kshitij has, done an excellent job, characterizing the energy transition as a whole, and the linkage to the acknowledgement of the Paris Climate Agreement and all the ESG targets that companies are setting, and the that companies really want to work with companies that have greener supply chains and that sort of thing. So I'm 100% aligned there. When I think of the changes, like I'm gonna pivot from that more to what's close to my heart, which is the geosciences piece. And I don't know how many young geoscientists might be on the call today, but over the last 5 years, for sure, we've seen all the oil majors exit Canada. We've had takeaway issues, we've had pipeline issues, we've had curtailment, we've all these things. That the reason it's important in this conversation is that it has left an industry, a bright talent pool, reeling, right? So we've got a brain drain. I think we've got a lack of young professionals under 5 years left in the industry, which I think is a serious concern. So that's kind of one piece, but where I think it's going is, or what I've noticed the changes are, is people are pivoting into data science, or ways that they can retool and reskill into the sustainable development areas. And then, like as Liz has pointed out, the alternative energy, so geothermal energy, helium, hydrogen, every color you can think of now, our carbon capture, utilization, and storage has become really big. And so we're trying to understand what the carbon market is. So there's just so many new jobs that are going to come on the horizon for us to kind of meet the technological challenges that Kshitij is talking about and that we're challenging ourselves to do. So that's kind of how I rationalize it and wrap it up with a bit of a geoscience spin onto it.
Oh, that's awesome, Janine. And it actually speaks to some of our own research at EHRC, looking at where like occupations that are potentially going to disappear hypothetically. And I always like to point to, in the electricity industry, the smart meter reader. Or the meter reader, somebody who used to come around to your house once a month and they take the reading and they'd take it back to the office. It was all on paper, and then they'd enter it into a database or whatever. And now we all have smart meters on our homes and businesses, and that job is gone. But the smart meter readers actually, and there's some great stories about this, started to retool early before those jobs disappeared. And so now they are, to your point, data scientists, or they are working in the operation centers, managing all of that data flow, because that's a whole other occupation that just didn't exist even 5 or 10 years ago. Cybersecurity specialists. Who knew that Hydro-Quebec has 137 cybersecurity specialists dealing with cyber threats on a day-to-day basis? Like, there are massive opportunities in this industry. And I think from the oil and gas sector, one of the things we know is that is to your point, bright, highly skilled, highly talented workforce. And so we just need to find them the right opportunities in other sectors of the economy, basically the growth areas. And we know that there's going to be growth areas in sustainability and in electrification and that sort of thing. So no, that's awesome. Okay, I'm gonna move on a little bit. I guess the next one would be, and we've already touched on this a little bit. So like, what changes have you seen in the workforce? But I guess more importantly, what role does sustainability have in this change? And I'm actually going to throw this one over to Natalie to start us off.
So what changes in sustainability? How's it changed? Sorry.
So the question was, so what changes have you seen in the workforce, and what role does sustainability have in the change?
Well, sustainability in the workforce, I would say, well, I've been in this sector, since graduating about 20 years ago. And it's kind of like the environmental sector. When I was in university, there was like environmental science, and there was, the 5 people that you knew that I always say ate hummus and wore Birkenstocks, and they were like the true hardcore environmentalists back in the day.
Hugs trees.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not really the case anymore. Like there's still those that exist, but there's like everyone is almost an environmentalist now. Like there's so many environmental science graduates, and there's so many different, like we have 2 people that work for us that have a master's of science communication, which who knew that was even a degree several years ago. So I would say that's pretty exciting to see that those changes and their roles are coming up. So we don't even know what their roles are now. But I know like the federal government just invested in the Greener Homes program that they have, which is $5,000 for homes to make them more energy efficient. And there's energy advisors who do the audit of the home. That are needed right across Canada and special rural parts of Canada. Those are jobs, those are fantastic jobs. Imagine going into someone's house and saying, this is what your score is right now, and here are all the ways that you can improve, and let me kind of educate you about it. Like, how awesome is that job? I know I know some friends and family who work in the oil and gas sector who say, I would love to do that job. So they're already thinking of their next career move. And I think that's pretty exciting to see that, and that there is opportunities versus just seeing it as like my job's ending. There are opportunities, and there's some fantastic opportunities that are out there. So I'd say, what role does sustainability have in this change? Huge. It is the future. I would say almost all jobs are going to be sustainable. It's just part of the job these days, which is nice to see.
That's a really interesting point, Natalie, that concept that there's no longer truly like a sustainability sector per se, but that, if we're going to do this right as a society, all jobs have to have an element of sustainability in them. So that's a really interesting point. Janine, over to you.
Okay, I see Shatiz also would like to comment on this one, but yeah, I touched on it a little bit. I think with sustainability, however you define it, for me, I equate it to the energy transition that we're seeing. And, with the alternative emerging energies, there is the ability for a lot of geoscientists to be on the forefront of the change. So I don't know that they necessarily have to leave or change what they do. I think they're just retooling it into a different space. And I think that is a very good news story, and it's a very exciting story, and one that we should be shouting from the rooftops. And I should share with you, there is an article that was written by a geologist in the UK, how actually geoscientists are critical in the energy transition. So that is exciting, and is something I hope younger new graduates are hearing and embracing. And that's really kind of all I really wanted to say there on that aspect. I'll turn it over. I think it was Shatiz who had a comment.
Yeah, Shatiz, over to you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Jenny. So just a different spin, right, in terms of what the Gen Z thinks these days, right? I think the exposure the kids have gotten over the past 10 years in terms of being made aware of the climate action and the need of sustainability is immense. Pandemic has further emphasized on the importance of work-life balance. So these are another factor that comes in when we look at the way the workforce of today looks into the different options they have in front of them. Gender equality, biodiversity, and equal opportunity plays a key role in terms of attracting talents across different industries, right? And even more so in our industry, as Janine was saying, how uh, less diverse we are compared to some of the other retail and the finance world around us. So these are few of the themes which is critical for us to ensure that we address to attract the best talents in the industry.
I think that's a great point, Shatiz. It's something also at EHRC we've been doing a lot of thinking about, and is the diversity, equity, and inclusion aspect. And one of the reasons, I mean, you know, it's one of the reasons, to be honest with you, is strictly economic. Canada's society has changed. It is no longer white, and the industry can no longer just be white and male and old. So, you know, we have to make change in the sector. We literally don't have a choice. The demographics aren't behind it. And if anything, we know from research from the OECD that a lot of our peer nations are actually going to see population decline over the next, you know, decades. Canada's in a unique position, largely driven by immigration and birth rate in Indigenous communities, that we're actually seeing population growth. It's one of the few OECD nations that has that going for it, and it is a very narrow edge, but it is an edge that we have nonetheless in this country. But in order to fully realize it for this sector, we have to be more diverse. We just don't have a choice. And so to me, it really comes down to economics at the end of the day. Yes, there's a social good, but economically, we can't afford to not do that, basically. So yes, thank you for that. I guess, you know, and Shatiz, you started into a bit of a response to my next question, so I may as well jump to that one. Why should companies and those entering the workforce prioritize sustainability? And I'm actually going to kick this one right back over to you again.
Thanks, Mark. Well, it starts with the commitment, right? We all see the United Nations resolution, the Paris Accord, the SDGs being written and drawn as a guideline for all of us. More than that, the commitment that Canada has taken to contribute towards the climate impact. It's being about. It provides us an opportunity to jointly address and contribute to climate change. At the same time, providing a robust social and economic environment for the stable work opportunities. So for me, I see this more as an opportunity for all of us to create more business opportunities than to just see it as a check in the box.
Yeah, it's important. And Liz, we haven't heard from you for a couple of minutes, so I want to kick this one over to you as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think some of the things that Shatiz covered, for me, kind of funnel into one factor, which is the government, the policy, the regulation, essentially the hurdles that we need to make, things like carbon tax, clean fuel standard. So some of the commitments that are being made globally and federally are being translated into things that will impact the way that we do business. So, you know, from that perspective, we have to consider sustainability. We also have to consider it from the perspective of our investors, and you know, we have an entire generation, it's been referenced, that are coming in and they grew up with climate change as being the thing. Back in the day, I grew up with acid rain and the hole in the ozone layer and the wetlands. And, you know, now this generation is growing up with climate change. And so that future generation are our future investors. And so I consider it almost a foregone conclusion that we are pivoting into not profit first and sustainability second as a box checking exercise, as Shatiz said, but with those two, economics and sustainability being equal importance. So that's coming down the line too. And then in my business specifically, it's also coming into play with customers. We're looking at providing a critical mineral to the low carbon economy, and in particular electric vehicles, and customers like BMW and potential customers like BMW and Volkswagen They're looking to green their entire supply chain. And so they're reaching back to their raw material suppliers and asking for products that are net zero and low water use and reduced land use. And so we have to think about sustainability from a lot of different lenses. And it is depending on how you look at it, it's both a risk and an opportunity.
That's an awesome point, Liz. That whole concept of product life cycle sustainability. A lot of people sort of they think of like electric vehicles are like the solution to climate change, but you have to look at the whole supply chain of how that vehicle was produced and everything that goes into it before you can truly say that it's having that yes, it's going to have a GHG emissions reduction component, but without that supply chain view of it, we still have work to do basically as a country and as a world. Janine, over to you on this one.
You know what, Mark? I don't have a lot to add on this one. I mean, it's been covered. The two sentences that I prepared has been covered already, but I do agree. My fundamental belief is that customer values are changing. And all business models are evolving. Even if you look at, all of the oil majors, even utilities, like everyone's business models are shifting now to accommodate for where we are with ESG and our climate goals. So yeah, that's really all I'd like to say on that one.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to move on because we've talked a lot about sustainability so far, and we've talked a little bit about mentorship, but I'd like to get sort of into mentorship a little bit more. So I guess one of the leading questions would be, what makes a good mentor in your experience? And I'm going to start off with Liz on this one.
All right. So I think I said it at the beginning that mentors can be lots of different things, right? It's like they can come into your life for an hour and give you all kinds of good nuggets and mentorship, or it can be, a more formal thing that maybe lasts a few years, maybe something that lasts a lifetime. And so I would encourage anyone who's looking for a mentor to be aware and open to all different types of opportunities for mentorship. I think one of the big things of what makes a good mentor is somebody that has time to set aside for you, somebody to actively listen to you. And then with the feedback that they provide you, they allow you to see something in a different way. So I'll share a bit of a personal story. So Janine is actually one of my mentors. And at one point, little known fact, Janine and I, we owned a business together. And when we partnered on the business, Janine, she mentioned she's a big picture thinker. And that was like game changing for me. I hadn't really thought about a lot of the big picture elements of how we would be running the business. I was more tactical and detailed. Sorry, I'm embarrassing her. But anyways, she's she's a peer of mine, and her mentorship has been amazing. And so there's just so many different opportunities to receive mentorship, and I would just encourage everyone to be open to them.
That's awesome, and so nice of you to call out Janine on the call. I love the smile though, Janine. You're not blushing. At least you can't see it through Zoom.
Yeah.
Natalie, do you have thoughts on this one? I know you've acted in a mentorship capacity in particular for a number of people too.
Yeah, I think I'm always keen to share my experiences so that others can learn from the mistakes that I've made and benefit for sure. I think a great mentor, and Liz, you kind of touched on this, is someone gives you guidance but allows you to make your own decisions. I think that's really key. And I would also like to say that like mentors don't always have to be older than you. They always don't have to be more experienced. I also learn from even my employees or my colleagues that I work with that are 10, 20 years younger than me, that there's so many different things that they bring to the table that it gives you a different perspective on things. And so I would say always be open to that, that you never know when the person is going to be there. It also doesn't necessarily have to be someone in your own industry. It can be someone in another industry or even in another country that you just kind of just learn something and you kind of have those aha moments, like that's a really good idea or an opinion, or I never thought of it that way. So just kind of be open to it and notice it in yourself when you're kind of catching yourself. And then for me, I kind of alluded to this earlier that like a lot of times I've been my own mentor. And really my experience and I'll share this one kind of when change happened for me was actually, we were talking about the difference of men and women in the workplace. And I was working at this one company and there was this one gentleman and he was walking around, he's probably about 24, walking around, and I was in my 30s, early 30s at this point, walking around saying like, I should be a manager at this point, blah, 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 very vocal about it, which I couldn't believe that he was walking around saying that he should be promoted, because I thought, oh my God, like talk about the gall to walk around and just say that in front of everyone, in front of senior management, just being like, I should be a manager. And then I kind of stopped for a minute and I thought, because I thought, I'm not a manager yet. He's 10 years younger than me, never mind the age, but like 10 years of experience. Why, I'm not a manager, so why, what gives him the right to do it? And I kind of thought naturally, what are you doing? Like, who cares? Like, so what if he's saying that you should be doing it? You should be the one saying it. So why aren't you? And I kind of thought, yeah, why aren't I? So that's kind of the pivotal moment when I said, okay, it's about me being the best champion for my own career. And I needed to make that change. I didn't need to walk around the office saying I should be a manager, but when those management jobs came up, I should apply for them rather than being wait until I was asked to apply for them or someone said, kind of handed it to me. I was, kind of took the reins of my own career. And since then, my career is kind of like, if you looked at my LinkedIn history, you'll see I've gone up quite significantly in the probably past 10 years. But that's when that change kind of happened for me, that I just said, okay, I need to be my own champion. So I would say to everyone here, like, be your own champion, like go after the things that you want, because no one is going to hand them to you. And if you have them handed to you, you're just lucky.
Natalie, that's a great point. At the end of the day, mentors can only help so much. It's really up to us to make change in our own lives, individually, basically, to self-reflect, to see where we need to make change and go about finding and doing that. So no, that's an awesome point. I remember talking to someone, this was a few years ago, and she actually had what she called her board of mentors. Which was really like sort of like a board of directors. So anybody who's familiar with like the not-for-profit or like, corporation governance or whatever, you have, like people who are specialists in different things. So you might have somebody from legal and somebody from accounting and somebody from HR and somebody, whatever it happens to be, that's their specialty. And you stack your board of directors with these people. Well, she did the same thing. She had like a financial person who she would bounce financial ideas off of. She had like a career trajectory person who like would guide her on, the tough, I want to raise decisions and that sort of thing. And then she had somebody else who was just, more of a be your best person sort of spiritual guide, So all of those, and I thought that's a really interesting perspective. Like what is it that you need in your life, and then find those people to surround yourself with to help guide you. And I just thought that was a really, really neat way of doing it. I haven't stacked my own deck yet, so that's still a work in progress. But I always thought that was a really, really neat way of thinking about it. So we've talked about good mentors, but there are also bad mentors. And so I guess my question to you now would be, have you ever had a mentor that wasn't quite the right fit for you? And then how did you approach it? And I think Shatiz, you wanted to lead off on this one.
So let's look at it from a different lens, Mark. A mentor who was the best fit for you at a specific phase in your career might not be the right fit for you in a different phase of your career. And the key is your ability to recognize usefulness of the mentor through this transition. What are you trying to get out of that mentor? Is that mentor having the relevant experiences that you're looking for to grow yourself or during your career? And sometimes you may get stuck. And if you get stuck, I think what you should be doing is to weigh in on the guidance which that mentor is able to provide, rather than cribbing about what you were expecting and if it did not happen. So try to always look from a positive frame of mind and try to extract the positives that you can get from the mentor. And choosing mentors can be tricky, right? Especially when you are starting first. So always try to explore if there is an opportunity where you can do the meetup with the mentor prior and set the expectations between yourself and the mentors so that you can follow up and ensure that it keeps you and the mentor on the right track. And then it's the experience that you go through, right? So I didn't exactly answer what you asked me to, but yes, you have to be conscious and be very proactive during the entire process.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. And Janine, I'm right over to you on that one.
Yeah, no, I just like to comment on what Shati said, because I think this is something that I only just learned. Like, you can outgrow your mentor. And that's actually good. It means you're growing. And there's nothing wrong with that. And when I reflect on my career, because, you know, Liz has brought up this peer-to-peer mentoring, what happened is, you know, earlier in your career, you seem to get more mentoring, and then it just kind of tapers off. And I found that's when I went to my peers and this personal board of directors, right? And that's the beautiful thing about this industry. There's so many diverse people around you to learn from. And I learned from my employees. I learned from the leadership team that I lead with. I learned from our board of directors. I learned from my advisory board. Like, life is a growth journey, right? Like, you never stop learning and you never stop getting mentorship around you, even if it's not formalized. And so, yeah, I think definitely towards the mid stage of my career, it's definitely peers that have really supported and elevated me to kind of where I am now. And that's what makes a good mentor, is they just care enough, put some time in. They're not trying to micromanage what you're doing. They'll challenge you. They'll call out maybe your biases, and yeah, know when to let you go, to kind of move on to the next thing. And getting mentors outside of your organization is also something I've had to do. So I've had a lot of advocates in my career, and I've had mentors, and they're very different. And I myself am more of an advocate than a mentor. I want to actually, that's on my list of things to do, is to actually be a better mentor. So I'm going to connect with you, Mark, on the tools that you have for that. But yeah, I think acknowledge that within your organization for growth, you need to have an advocate, not just someone who's kind of teaching you kind of how things work. So that would be kind of some of my advice right now to anyone starting out.
That's a great point, Janine, too. There's this sort of difference between a coach, a mentor, an advocate, and you know, a mentor, you know, if you were to really loosely define it, as somebody that you can sort of bounce ideas off of, offer guidance, that sort of thing. An advocate really takes a proactive approach in your career. Like, they open doors, they introduce you to people, they really sort of are in your corner fighting the fight, and like, they're the ones you go to when you get battered and bruised, and they help pick you up and like move you forward again. So that's a really interesting point to separate, like to delineate those two. So thank you for that too. I'm actually, just because there's been some really interesting questions that have come up on the audience, I'm going to start a little earlier on some audience questions, because I think they're very relevant for the discussion that we're having today. So the first one that I'm actually going to pull up is, given the last 17 months, because I think this is topical, right? Like, the pandemic, it's had an impact. You know, people who have been working in the field are more separated for one reason or another. People who are working from the office are now working from home, and they're more separated for a variety of reasons. A lot of research showing that collaboration, communication is problematic. So, you know, in your opinion, what are some of the benefits or drawbacks, and how does it impact mentorship of employees, this new sort of workplace normal, for lack of a better word, that we're facing? I'm not sure who wants to take us away, so I'll hand the floor to whoever is. Oh, Shatiz came off of mute faster than anyone else, so I'll hand it over to you.
You know, as we were talking, right? I think human species, as proven by pandemic, again, are the most adaptable species on this earth, right? And the Gen Z is even more digitally qualified, you know, than the previous generations. And I think it it even increases the opportunity for mentorship, right? Previously, when you thought about mentorship, you thought about sitting face to face, having a cup of coffee, and then discussing the things over. Uh, Obviously, that's the best that can happen. But what I have seen in my work life today, that I have people reaching out to me within the Schneider network from different continents, different zone, asking to connect, picking up my brains on the different transformations that they're leading, which was not even on the table before the pandemic started. So I would say it has facilitated, in a way, it has opened more doors for mentorship if you really look out for the opportunities.
That's interesting. It's interesting. Anybody else want to jump on that one?
We've onboarded.
Janine.
So our company is tripled in size since COVID started because we're small.
Wow.
So we hired most of our technical staff during COVID, and wow, right? I mean, you've never even met these people in person, and then you're trying to onboard them, but we did it. We've raised $90 million during COVID. Like, who could have thought that was possible? So the technological change that we're experiencing as a society is amazing. But one particular example is an intern that I hired through a job grant this summer, and he's still in school. And so we're all seniors at our company, or at least mid-level, right? So there's not a lot of like true mentoring you have to do. You have to communicate objectives, but not like, hey, here's how you open this software, here's how you make this map, right? So anyway, I did debrief with him at the end of the summer, and he said that he learned a lot. But he found being at home, there was just a drain. It was just tiring to be on Zoom all day and all night. And when I talk to my own staff, I hear the same thing. So I think we're able to achieve a lot under these conditions and with technology, but my gut feeling is you still need the face-to-face. You still need to be able to stand in a room with a whiteboard and interact as humans. That might be my personal bias coming through, but I think what we're going to ultimately see is a flexibility in the work environment where employers know they can entrust their people to be working and working hard. But there are going to be times where you're going to need to be in the office and do that face-to-face thing. So I think there's pros and cons to both, but we've obviously experienced the highs of it and some of the challenges as well.
I think that's a great point, Janine. Like the ability of technology to facilitate those connections, but at the same time, it's like Zoom fatigue is a thing. And it's funny you brought up the intern, because we actually hired a couple of interns at our organization this past summer as well. And the feedback from them was like, yeah, it was a great experience. I learned a lot, like this sort of thing. But they sort of felt almost siloed a little bit from the team, because you're not in an office where you can sort of run down to somebody's office and ask a question. Like you have to schedule a time to talk, or like an instant messenger just isn't quite the same as actual, like that face-to-face interaction, right? And so one of them actually had the opportunity to go into the office a couple of times because we were doing like a big mail out thing. And she loved it. Like she was like, this is the best thing ever. I mean, we only had 2 other people in the office at the time. Like we're an office of like 15 to 17 on any given day, or we're supposed to be. But she's like, that was, of the whole experience, that was the best part of the experience, was actually going into the office and being there with 2 other colleagues, basically. So I mean, there's something to be said about that for sure.
Well, I bet if you were to poll everyone on this panel to recall when they were a summer student, I mean, that's when you learn what to wear and what to say and where to go for lunch and how to make a presentation. And it wasn't about the work. It was some of the just generalities of entering the workforce, right? And that, I mean, it's just taken away from young people. I mean, I think it's got to be a challenge for them to integrate on the internet, we'll say.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I would totally agree with you for sure. Oh, Natalie, yes.
I was just going to say, so we're actually a work remote because we're national. We've always been a work remote group. We do get together in person, or we used to, and will in the future. But so we've established a great rapport with each other. There's some people that I haven't met, and we've worked together for over a year now, but I feel like I know them really well. So I think some of the tools that we've used are like Slack. which is a great way to make it informal versus email. You don't be like, hi, Mark, like, cheers, naturally. It's just like, do you have this or whatever? And so there's different channels in Slack as well that allows you. And we've created a channel that's just like a general. So it's kind of like the water cooler talk that we just have, and just throw funny things in there, links. We also have a positive feedback channel, which is great because I know for myself and Corey, we're more external. That's our executive director. And so we get a lot of the positive feedback from other people. So we like to share that with the team, because normally you come back to the office and you'd be like, oh my God, this person just said this about us. And isn't that fantastic? We don't get the opportunity. So we said, why don't we create a positive feedback? We can give each other positive feedback, but also just in general, anytime we hear something, we just kind of put it there for the whole team to read, which is always nice. It's kind of like, it's always nice to get gold stars. The other thing that we do, which is a lot of fun, is we give each other tacos, which, long kind of story short, is it's kind of just the taco emoji is what we give each other. It's like kind of like a virtual high five, but we just use the taco because who doesn't like tacos? I always say, if you don't like tacos, I'm nacho type. So there you go. There's a good dad pun for you there. But
that's awesome.
But we give each other tacos anytime there's a good thing. And we actually also get together virtually for tacos every now and again. And we just have tacos, and someone will be responsible for just creating some fun questions that we just go through while reading the tacos on a PowerPoint. It would be like, tell me about an example of like your favorite country, or what was your like random questions that we just kind of all just get to know each other and chat a little more and just have a little fun social thing. So we've done that as well. And I feel really actually more connected to my team that's across Canada, and some people that I haven't met, than the team that I did when I was in an office setting, which is pretty cool and unique. But there are definitely ways to still feel connected.
For sure. It's funny you mentioned Slack. That's actually the tool that we use for our instant messenger, and we've actually set it up very similar to you, by the way. It's a great tool for that sort of thing. I'll have to add an Efficiency Canada link, because I think we can even link them together. So there's another question from the audience. I'm going to try and go through a few of these here. As a recent graduate in the geosciences, what skills should I be working on to be attractive during the energy transition? Janine wants to take this one.
Actually, I was pointing at Liz. Liz, you should take this one.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you're pointing off screen for me. Liz is actually over here.
Sorry.
Well, I would say that it depends on what you're interested in. So I'm a big fan of, taking a look inside and figuring out what lights your heart on fire and chasing after that. And so I would say it starts with research. If you're not, specifically going into a traditional industry for the geosciences, like, environmental science or mining or oil and gas, maybe you'd be chasing after one of the things Janine mentioned, like helium or hydrogen or lithium. Lithium in Alberta is mining, but it's very non-traditional because it uses oil and gas techniques. So I would find out about the thing that you're really interested in and chase that down, research it, look at jobs job postings in that sector, look at what the requirements are, and see where the gaps are, and take free courses online, see if you can find a mentor. There's lots of ways to sort of fill that gap. And at the very least, do things that demonstrate your own interest in the space, because that's what's going to set somebody apart for me when I'm looking at resumes. Somebody has done a free online course on the thing, then I know that that's something that they're inherently interested in and passionate about. And it's not going to be hard to get them up to speed on the work that they'll need to do.
And you've already started on it, so I'm actually going to sort of follow up on this one, Liz. But somebody's asked a question, like, with the many courses and mentorship programs out there, how do you assess which one is best? What are like the main parameters that should be measured before joining a new course or program, in your opinion?
I think that the research piece comes into play a little bit, because you have to do the research before investing your time in the course to understand if that course is going to give you the information that you need. So syllabus or course information or course preview, I think, would probably give you some of that information. Sometimes you do have to just start something and figure out if it's right for you. And if it's not, it's cool to bail, right? Especially if it's one of those free ones online. When it comes to taking more formal education though, there's folks that get paid as registrars to tell you all about the courses. So I would take some time to pick their brains about the courses and the types of people that take the courses and the types of jobs those people are reaching for after they're completed.
And I could probably back up just with some more general comments to what Liz said. What I've noticed is, and it's not something I've kept up with in my career, but there's this emphasis on data science now. And so being able to understand subsurface data and turn it around with a machine learning like context to it, which is something that my intern was actually teaching me this summer. So when it goes back to who you learn from people who are 20 years younger than you all the time. So data analytics is big, but you have to understand the pitfalls of it. And you still need to be able to get your senior mentors on side. They need to believe in your geoscience in order to, to believe in your model kind of thing. And I'd say that's kind of the biggest one, but also I've noticed a lot of people branding themselves. I think branding is good. But you shouldn't brand yourself unless it like really aligns with your core value system and core things that you're really truly interested in. And going back to Liz's comment on what sets your heart on fire, I like that one. You need to, over time, you can do something you don't really love for a short time to get through it, but it's not going to propel you when times get hard or things get rough. So, it is to your benefit to be doing things that ignite your passion, and then you keep building and learning on that. And don't spread yourself too thin and say, I'm an expert in everything, because nobody believes that. So pick something and hone that skill and still be able to kind of see the big picture would be some advice I would give.
Janine, you actually brought up a really interesting point on this whole subject of skills and that sort of thing. And I'm not even sure you realize it. But you had mentioned that you need to get buy-in on an idea or a technical concept or that sort of thing. And one of the things that we've done at EHRC is we've looked at sort of, this holistic view of like how are graduates doing like out of technical programs in Canada. So sciences, engineers, technicians, technologists. And one of the things that we've consistently heard, and this sort of speaks to what you just spoke about, your intern who was like highly technically capable, really came to you some really good ideas. But one of the things that we found challenging is actually on not the technical side, but actually on the professional side. So it's the soft skills, the ability to sell an idea, to get the buy-in, to communicate it, to actively listen. I think a lot of us have heard this before, right? Like teamwork, communication, like some of those skills. I'd be curious to know your own thoughts on that from the group. Like, is this something that you've experienced as well, like as an area of development for people starting out in the industry? And Janine, just because you had the floor before.
Okay, I feel like I'm taking up a lot of space, so I wanted to make sure someone else didn't want to contribute. It is fundamental, Mark. I think you nailed it. And this is where that whole package comes into play. So being technically strong is great, but if you can pair that with a, high emotional intelligence, collaboration, teamwork, appreciation for diversity, you'll go a lot longer, a lot farther, I guess, in the workforce. And even like my first mentors at a school, nowadays he might get in trouble, but he was like, you need to wear a suit jacket. And you need to know how to present upside down, because back then you were presenting with paper maps. And so we would present all of our drilling locations with paper, right? And then you had to have a stack of paper in case they asked you a certain question. But you know what I will say about that mentor, to this day, I still think of him. He would put his youngest geologists in front of the president of Devon, Canada, because he was trying to show us what the future could be. And so I honestly think, he lit that fire in me to want to keep going, to know I want to get to the boardroom because I've been there before. And I had no business being there when I was 25, but he empowered me. So, and so, yeah, he going back to Jeff McLean, I'll say who he is. Yeah, it was all about the story and the pitch to support your technical objective.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm just going to have a quick review of some of the other questions we had here. One of the questions actually is less related to mentorship and more about the whole energy transition. So how do you see Canada as an active player or leader in the global energy transition, and who will be the key drivers for the energy transition in Canada? Traditional oil and gas, switching to the energy mix, startups, others. What do you see? Shitiz, I think I just saw you come off of mute.
Yeah, so look, some facts, right? Canada has one of the worst energy usage per habitant in the world. It's actually number 2, right after UAE. We need 16 gigawatts of green power to be added in the next 20 years in Canada. Some of the things which will facilitate it is obviously the carbon taxes, right? It is going to go 5 times. It is going to be $170 per ton. We're talking about hydrogen being the new fuel, the evolution of the oil and gas, which we are expecting to see. The renewable is increasing, but we have a long way to go, right? It's still only 16% of the energy mix. And we see in some of the provinces, it's even lower, right? So if you look at Alberta, Saskatchewan, Atlantic, it's far lower than Ontario and Quebec. So we have got the right recipe to be leading this at the forefront, and we have the right commitment from all the levels, right? We mentioned the incentives that is coming from the federal or the provincial levels. We have the acknowledgement coming from the corporate sectors. I think one of the panelists mentioned about our future investors being very conscious about this transition and the acknowledgement of the climate impact. So all these things, if you put together in a box and shake it, I think Canada is in a very sweet spot to be leading this energy transition, and we have the right recipe and the right commitment from all the different dimensions.
Awesome. Anybody else want to jump on that one? I think that's a really great point, Shitiz. We sometimes forget that Canada has the dubious distinction of being one of the world's worst energy consumers on a per capita basis. But on a bright side, the electricity industry is actually, particularly in Ontario, is actually one of the cleanest as far as carbon emissions goes. Top 4 actually in the world as far as jurisdictions as far as GHG emissions go. Natalie, you had just jumped off though. You jumped on the jumped off of mute.
So something that I love, because it kind of sums it all up, the United Nations has something that's called the ambition loop. And what it is it's because it's going to take everyone. It really is. And so what that theory is essentially it takes private sector first to kind of move. It's like a circle. So it's a loop. So it takes private sector to move forward and make the changes that are needed for greenhouse gas reductions. And then the government says, okay, there's enough people kind of moving forward. And then they create policies because they say, okay, the policies are needed now. There's enough people, enough support, enough political will to make these changes. And then it kind of goes back to the laggards of the companies that are like, oh, we don't really want to make these changes. And then they are forced to make those changes. And then it goes back to the companies that are leading the way, and it just goes in a full circle. And that's I love that theory. It kind of like it's the ambition loop is very apt here.
That's awesome. Janine, I'm going to actually deliver the last question to you. It's actually from the audience as well, by request. So how do you approach technical mentors who have technical experience if they don't work in the same organization? In general, how to show them what's in it for them. And this looks like a shout out. I am a fan of Ivor's tech, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I think we've covered some of these points off a little bit, but in general, because the industry has changed and there are a lot of people out of work, there's a lot of networking events, there's lots of places to volunteer, there's lots of mentorship programs. And I think people like to feel needed and like to do good things. Like, people have big hearts, and oftentimes they want to help you for nothing at all. And that's true. But also just don't discount what you bring to the table. As I mentioned, I think there, the sustainability space is so broad, and no one can know everything. And so someone from a different background, a different industry, or maybe someone in the same industry that's younger than you, you have something to bring to the table. So that's my message is don't discount what you bring. And like Liz mentioned, you do have to, put effort in and demonstrate that you're actively working hard, because what I have noticed, because I try and make time every week for someone in my LinkedIn network, and when they just sit me down and interview me, and I can tell they haven't even read about the geothermal industry, I'm like, yeah, that was tough. That wasn't a good 30 minutes of use of my time. But when I meet someone who's hungry and passionate, and I feel like I can help them along and introduce them to someone else, then I'll do that. So, I guess one other point to add to that is something one of my mentors, who's an engineer who I hadn't worked with since my Devon days, he said to me, it takes a year before a new relationship, like something bears fruit from it. So you don't just meet someone and it poof overnight, there's, a win-win there, right? You actually have to put effort in and get to know the person. And over time, like something will blossom from it. And I think relationships are kind of underpinning everything we do in the business and technical world. So you've got to put the time and the effort in.
All right, the last one, thank you for that, Janine. The last question is sort of a big one. How can we depoliticize the transition from fossil fuel to renewables to keep the growth pace consistent? Problem, I guess, starts when a change in the government happens and their policies directly affect that. Anybody want to jump on that one? How do we fix politics in Canada?
Tease.
I unmuted. So we talk about this a little bit in the work I do at the Energy Futures Lab, because I think issues with energy and energy transition are inherently polarizing, right? You're either the greedy capitalist or you're the crazy hummus eating tree hugger that Natalie talked about before. And I have been both people in my life. It's possibly more than one thing at a time. I think most people are somewhere in the middle, right? And I also think that it's situational, right? How we feel about things. And so my personal approach to it is you need to be open to learning all the things. We need to be opening our perspectives to understanding things from other sides, right? Putting yourself in the shoes of the people that you're opposing. Because if we don't show up to a problem like that, we will never get anywhere with depolitizing.
Liz, I think that was a great way to finish up the discussion. And just like you, I actually think of myself as a hummus-eating, Birkenstock-wearing, tree-hugging capitalist who's greedy as can get out. With that, what I would say is I have a couple of things I just wanted to sort of wrap up from our discussion today. First, a shout out to Shatiz, the idea that mentorship, 1 hour of mentorship is equivalent to 4 hours of like hard research, learning, and professional development. That was a really interesting concept, and I'm glad we brought it up. Be an idea factory. I think that was a really nice way of thinking about growing your own career and learning and professional growth. Always challenge yourself to be better. So it's good to find a mentor that will help you do that, but continue to do it on your own. So a shout out to Natalie for that one. And it's okay to experiment. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong, and that's okay. It's all about the learning journey. And if you get it wrong, you just learn something that, you aren't going to do again in the future. So that's great. Climate change and impact is real. And I'm just going to leave that one at that point there. But the follow on to that is that, and I think this was a really interesting point, Natalie, all jobs will be sustainability jobs in the future. We don't have a choice. If we're going to do this right, everybody's going to be touched by, and every occupation or a lot of occupations are going to be touched by the change that comes about. And it's not just the technical occupations: engineers, technicians, technologists, scientists, marketing and communications, finance, high finance, business development, customer service. Like across the board, we are going to see occupations and shifts. And so all of them will be affected. When looking for a good mentor, things to think about are: does this person have time? Will they be actively listening and engaged when we're having a discussion about career and growth, professional development? Can they provide thoughtful and helpful feedback? They don't necessarily have to be older. It could be somebody who's a peer, or it could be somebody who's younger than you. We all learn things from different people at different stages in our lives, and hopefully it provides us the right opportunities to self-reflect. Sometimes the mentor in our life is the mentor for right now, and it isn't necessarily the same person forever, and that's okay. And it's okay to recognize when that transition needs to happen. And don't forget what you yourself can bring to a mentor-mentee relationship. Sometimes the mentor is learning as much as you are from them. So another important thing to keep in mind. I think that sort of captures in a really high level a number of the things we've talked about today. I'd like to thank everyone who's still with us, who stayed on to hear the panel today. I think this has been really informative for me, and I hope you've all learned something. A special thanks to Liz, Janine, Shatiz, and Natalie for being with us to talk about their own life experiences in this area. And a special shout out to Decentralized Energy Canada, of course, for hosting the event today. Really appreciate this. Thank you all, and I wish everyone a wonderful afternoon wherever you are in Canada, and that it continues to be a sunny fall.